Hey, hello, my friend. Welcome to the Artist Next Level podcast. Have you ever struggled with an art commission that maybe feels off-brand or feels like outside of your style? Well, let's talk about it. I'm going to give you 5 proven steps to help you, kind of bring it back to your vision and your style while still keeping the collector or the client happy.
Resources, inspiring interviews, business practices, and practical advice to take your art career to the next level. Join Sergio Gomez in today's Artist Next Level and get ready to take control of your career.
Well, my friends, super happy to connect with you because recently I completed a big art commission. It was a painting that is 72 inches by 72 inches or 6 feet by 6 feet, perfect square. And this is for a client here in South Florida. So I'm super happy about that because I finished the commission, but it was a difficult commission. I had a little bit of a hard time, with the vision of the commission and bringing it to focus, making it adapt to my style, right? So I want to give you also, things that I use that help me kind of bring it all into perspective and make it work for me so that, maybe if this is something that you have as well, where you're dealing with a difficult art commission, that you can also pull it through. And most importantly, so that you feel good, so you are happy to share with others and, add it to your portfolio, and also while your collector also is really happy about it, right? You don't want to create something that, it doesn't fit what you do or doesn't, fit what the collector, is also looking at. Ideally, if a collector came to you, right, is because they like what you do, right? I rarely have ever met a collector who blindly asks an artist, for a commission if they have no idea what the artist makes. And if that happens, you just tell them right there, right? I don't do this type of commission. For example, when I say that I'm an artist, sometimes people think, oh, can you make my portrait or can you make my daughter's portrait? And although there's something really nice about it, I don't do it. I don't do portraits. It's not my thing. Nothing wrong with portraits. I love portraits, but it's just not what I make. So, you gotta understand that. But once you pass that and you have a collector who really, really likes your work, then how will you handle that? That's kind of what happened to me, and it's something I've been thinking about lately, and that's why I wanted to do this episode. And so what happened to me was like this collector who lives here in South Florida knows my work well. They already own a few pieces of mine, and says, Sergio, I have this idea for a painting that I want you to make for me. Actually, for us, for my wife and I, to be in our bedroom. This is the thing I want to wake up every morning to, feel happy, feel excited, feel alive, has to be happy, has to be beautiful, has to remind me of God, and also so like these elements of spirituality. He mentioned like the living water, for example, the presence of God, butterflies. His wife loves butterflies, etc. Right? So all these like beautiful things, and he also talked about from chaos to beauty. And it was a concept. He didn't have a picture of it. He just had ideas, concept of, what he dreamed this could be. So he gave me pretty much a green light and said, Sergio, you go for it, right? And let me know when it's done. So I love when a collector gives you full freedom, but I also know that could be difficult because what if you go in a totally way different direction than what he or she is, was anticipating. So that's something that you have to figure out as you start your commission, how much feedback you want to get from the commission along the way. And that's something that you kind of learn from each of your collectors. Some collectors like to be quite involved and be up to date, and others are like, no, don't bother me, just do what you have to do. I'm sure I will like it. The second one is the one that's a little harder, right? That gives you more pressure as an artist because what if they don't like it? But I took, in my case for this particular commission, I said, okay, that's awesome. I love it. I'll take the challenge. I'll bring that into my studio and get to work on that piece. And I'll let you know when it's over, when it's done. So, I had to think about all those different elements, right? Different elements. So the first thing that I want to share with you, because I said I have 5 things that, you should think about when creating a commission to make sure that it fits your style. like 5 steps. So the first one is like define your boundaries. That's the first one. I'll say define your boundaries and clarify the commission scope, right? You gotta be very clear on what is it that you are able to do, capable to do, and willing to do, right? There's a lot of things I could do, but I don't want to do as an artist. It's not part of kind of what I do. For example, I mentioned portraits. I don't paint portraits. And within that, also thinking about what I do and the scope of my work, the style of my work. I like things in my work. If you are familiar with my art, which by the way, you can find it at sergiogomezonline.com if you want to see more of my work. Actually, you will be able to see this particular commission I'm talking about. It's called Living Water. So, and that'll be fun if you want to go and see the end result. So, to me, defining a boundary is like understanding, okay, I know this painting, needs like all these different ideas, the living water, the presence of God, the butterflies, chaos, from chaos to order, chaos to beauty, also the idea of beauty and presence. They have to live somewhere. They cannot just be random things on this giant canvas. So I decided to go for a more of a landscape type of painting. So I thought all these things need to be somewhere. So what a better way to put it all within a landscape setting. Now the client never said landscape, so I was taking a risk by going with the landscape. But as I was working on the landscape, and I was actually creating this landscape, started to look quite realistic. And at some point I realized, wait a minute, I'm going out of boundaries, right? People know me for my more painterly style, where the paint drips, where, things look sort of abstract, but then there are also other elements that are more defined. So I like the mixture of both, right? When somebody looks at the painting, there are a lot of abstract elements, but there are also other elements that they can totally recognize and sometimes could be quite realistic. So, that was kind of some of the boundaries I had to figure out. I don't want to go too realistic and I don't want to go too abstract. It still has to fit within what I do. However, based on that, also, clarifying the commission for me was like, okay, writing down the different elements and ideas that the collector gave me and say, okay, I think I'm getting a clearer picture if I put all this within a landscape setting. And that to me was the idea of defining my boundaries, my own boundaries, how much to go one side versus the other, and also clarifying the idea, by putting it, in this case for this particular commission, all under kind of a landscape type of setting. Now, the second one, which I think is important, is to ask questions, right? And align on a vision early on. It was very early where I decided this is going to go in the direction of a landscape. Now, I could have gone back to the collector and asked him, for if it was okay for a landscape. Now, in this case, because I know the collector and the collector has put all the trust in me and I trust the collector too, I didn't have to, right? But if it was a different person, probably I would have had a conversation about this, right? So asking questions is important. So I asked other different types of questions because for this particular collector, there were other questions that were also important for me to find out. More personal questions about stories or ideas, things that were more personal to him, so that I would, consider those things as I was working on the piece. I go to this collector's home about maybe once a week or so for some meetings that we have with a group. And so I have come to know him quite a bit. So that really helps me in, putting together this vision in a way that also aligns with my own vision as an artist. So asking questions is super important. So if you have a commission that you're gonna be working with, asking those questions to the start is really important. Things even like as simple as, let me kind of have a picture of the wall where it's going to go, kind of look at the decor around the room, size, specific size, frame versus not frame. All those things are important. In this piece, for example, we decided to go with no frame. So he said he didn't want a frame. So that means I had to make sure that I did a wrap around on the image. So that way, when you look at the side of the painting, it's not just a black, edge or a white edge, but actually I extended the painting all around. So I did a canvas wrap, extending the image as I painted it all the way to the edges, which was really nice, all the way around. So it looks more three-dimensional and it looks beautiful. It really doesn't need a frame. It looks really, really nice once it went up in the wall. So as you ask questions, listen carefully to what things the collector makes him or her excited. That's something that I have learned to kind of read the body language of the collector. There are certain things, and when they say it, their eyes glow. And that's something that you really got to get, well depicted or situated or considered in your commission. For example, for him, he kept talking about the living water, and the living water as expressed in the Gospels of the Bible, specifically when Jesus talked about the living water. So again, there's this spiritual element on this painting that for my collector was very important. So I had to study a little bit more about that, dig into that, do some research also on the visuals for how this would look like for me. And that leads me to number 3, which is sketch, and get ideas of your project as you go along. Because sometimes, you start with an initial idea, but as you get going, sometimes you may need to make adjustments. Sometimes you may need to refine that idea, which happened to me, as I was working on it. I felt, because going back to the topic, right? How do you make this commission, which sometimes may be difficult, make it fit with your own style? In my case, because people know me for the figurative abstraction pieces, figures, right? The people in my paintings. Since I was not going to have a person or a silhouette or a figure in the painting, I had to replace it with something else. So what was going to be that other element that would be the protagonist in the artwork? So I decided to go with the butterfly, because this was another element that the collector specifically said they love butterflies. His wife loves butterflies. So I decided to go with the butterfly as the main protagonist in the painting, as the main subject. So it's not just the landscape, but it's also, there's this butterfly. So I had to go through a number of sketches and studies, halfway into the painting, to figure out where they were going to be located, what size, how they would fit within the composition. So I decided to, as the living water idea, kind of make a splash on the water. And the water is like a little pond on this beautiful greenery, like a little bit, some couple mountains in the back. So almost like a Garden of Eden, in the Genesis story. So that's kind of how I saw it. The landscape is painterly, the sky is painterly. There are drips that that go all across the painting, which I love that. Again, that's kind of how I work. But then there's a splash of water in the middle of the pond, and from the splash of water there are white butterflies that are coming out, which is typical in my work. I use a lot of stencil of white butterflies. But then I made some in color, which were highly realistic, and I picked one that is very realistic and is actually also breaking the horizon line, which to me was important to make the painting a little bit more interesting versus just a very strong horizon line. So that I use that right as the main protagonist of the painting is this beautiful large butterfly that is right in the middle of the painting towards the left side, and painted quite realistically. So that was that, and I was very excited for that imagery. But it came as a result of sketching, of exploring, of looking into ideas as I progress into the painting. The next step, or number 4, is one that I would call also documenting your process. And this one for me was important too, because as I did significant changes on the painting, I would take a picture, and then I would work a little bit more, make some changes that were noticeable, and I would take a picture. So I have a really beautiful collection of pictures of the whole process of making this painting. But more than just that, is throughout the process, it allowed me to go back and see, the transitions, how the painting started and how it was now. So if there's certain elements of the painting that I like some steps earlier, I could go back and pull those things out, right? Again, these are the steps that will help me stay on track, stay on vision, the collector's vision, my vision, and how it fits to my style. So, by recording the steps, I was able to look how it started and where I am now and all the steps in between. Like, I'll give you a great example about this. On the lower right-hand side, there are some beautiful flowers that are in the painting. They are larger, they're the largest because they're closer to the viewer. And I paint those flowers like 10 times, 10 different colors. I would go paint them. First, they were all white. And I didn't like them, maybe look like weeds rather than, beautiful flowers. So I started looking at it and like, no, I think it needs some color. So I changed color. At some point, they were like, and every time I changed colors, I would take a picture, Then at some point, I made them like very, almost like neon looking. Not that much, but like very bright, super bright green and yellow and red. And then my daughter walks by and she says, oh, those flowers look like what you buy at the store and they're not real. Those are not real color flowers. They paint those flowers so they look like neon. I'm like, no kidding, really? She's like, yeah. It's like, oh, okay. So I went back and I toned them down, but allowing myself to go back into the history of the flowers, I was able to see, which iteration looked better and be able to go back to that. So, at the end, they are all colorful flowers and with beautiful colors. And actually they look better because, all these different layers of color on top of each other created a really beautiful surface for the flowers where they're not specifically one color, but they have multiple colors, but with one dominant color on the top. So really nice. Then the fifth thing that you want to look at is as you getting to the end, really making those final decisions and deciding when you're going to finish it, how you're going to wrap it all up, right? So that's your fifth step, deciding on the finishing and the final touches. That's the fifth one that I would highly recommend if you're working on a commission that is difficult, that is, challenging you to fit your style. Is as you're deciding to, you're getting closer to the end of it, sit down and live with it for a while. Something that I did is I actually, when I finished it, I turned the painting against the wall because I didn't want to see it for a few days, and I didn't want to look at the pictures. I thought it was finished and I decided, well, you know what? I'm just going to put it away, turn it around. I don't want to see it. Forget about it. Do totally other things when I'm in the studio, except working on this painting because it took me about a month to finish this painting. So, for the last like 4 days or so, maybe more, maybe almost a week. No, probably not a week. Maybe like 4 days or something. Can't remember. But for a few days, I put it away because prior to that, I was thinking about this painting all the time. I would be working on something else, and I just kept thinking about ideas for it. So at some point, I had to leave it alone, and that allowed me to at the end go back, turn it around, and decide that there were some things I wanted to fix, some things that I needed to touch up. But I was only able to notice them when I step away from the painting. And sometimes that happens to us a lot as artists. You're working in something becomes so familiar to you that you're not able to see what it needs anymore because it's so familiar in your mind. It's so fresh in your mind that allows you to, it doesn't allow you to be objective and to come at it with fresh eyes. And sometimes you got to step away from it. In this case, because I had a deadline, I couldn't leave it for too long untouched because I had to finish it. But it really helped me when I came back and I saw it and I sat down in front of it. I'm like, no, there's some things I need to fix. And I fixed them. And then I was super happy with the painting. At the end, I was very excited with the end result. This painting kind of pushed me in a new direction in my work. It really challenged me to kind of look at different elements, making this very beautiful painting and bright in color, which was a bit of a stretch for me. But at the end of the day, I was happy with how it turned out and that it still fit my style. So then the day came when I had to go and show it to the client, and both, all of the collectors, husband and wife, they were ecstatic. They loved it, and they are very happy to live with it in their home now. And that is the end of a wonderful story. So hopefully, my friend, as you are approaching or you doing difficult commissions, make sure these things can help you to do something that, keeps you excited as an artist, because when something you're doing a commission that goes out of your vision, goes out of your style, then it doesn't feel right. It feels like you just want to get it done with and forget about it. In the contrary, you want to be excited for it. You want to be excited for the project, because that will show when you take it to the client. Your excitement will also be transferred, right, by the way you talk about it, by your facial expression, by your corporal also expression. So those things are matter, right? So my collector saw I was so excited when I took this big painting home. I rented a U-Haul truck. We got it home. We got it out. I unwrapped it, and like, wow. So that was exciting and super excited about it. So I wanted to share this with you before I forget these steps that really helped me to create a wonderful painting for my client. So hopefully this is helpful, my friend. Thank you so much for joining me today, for listening to this podcast. Always excited to connect. Check out also, if you love video, check out also my YouTube channel. I don't know if you know, but now I just, in 2025, I passed 1 million views on my YouTube channel. Is the overall viewers count, counting all the YouTube videos that I have on my channel, which is pretty awesome. So if you are not watching my YouTubes, I try to put one a week. Doesn't always happen, but I try to do it. Go check them out. They're pretty fun, pretty awesome. So thank you for listening, and I will see you guys at the next level.
Check out our website at www.theartistnextlevel.com, where you will find our podcast library, learn about our upcoming webinars, find resources relevant to your career, and much more. Thanks for listening to today's podcast, and we'll see you at the next level.